Hello and welcome to our first roundtable of the local scene, a production of PACTV. On tonight's roundtable, we'll be discussing film. And I'm Zach Dolan, production lead for PACTV, and I'll be moderating tonight. I'm joined by Andy Driscoll of the Inebriate Art podcast, local comedian Sarah Martin, Dan Rodriguez, our Director of Technology and Creative Development, and our own Government Services Manager, Dave Antoine. We're here for an open-ended discussion, so let's jump right in. We're in Oscar season, but we'll touch on that. But first, the way we consume media has changed so much. Instead of going to the theater and seeing film, we're more apt to stay at home and watch it on the small screen. So I want to ask each of you, what is the last movie that you went and saw in the movies, and why did you choose to see that movie at the theater? Who wants to start?
I'll start. Last one I saw was Avengers Infinity War. I pretty much reserve going to the theater for the special effects blockbusters. If it's a indie house movie or something small, I'll watch that at home. But if it needs to be seen on a big screen, that's why I go. So.
Sarah?
I have no idea, but I went to the Lux level, and there's a lot of drinks up there, so it's an okay experience.
Dave?
I'm a movie junkie, as you know, so for me, the movie-going experience, it can either be big blockbusters or just local independent films. The last film I just saw was Stan and Ollie, and I went out of my way to go see that in Cambridge because I'm a big Laurel and Hardy fan. And for me, movie-going is a pretty special experience because I get to see films with my father, and it means a lot to him, too.
I got two boys, so we saw Bumblebee, which I was actually really happy about it. They did a nice job on it. But like Dave, the whole, whether you see it on the small screen or, I think like you do, that if it's a big tentpole kind of movie, a big experience kind of movie, then you got to see it in the theater. I almost get resentful towards people who don't go out of the way to do that because you miss so much of that experience, But that was also a big part of growing up, was I'd cut school, go to the movies in Boston, and they'd let me stay in the theater all day long watching the same movies. So it was Ghostbusters, Star Wars, and Empire Strikes Back. So that experience is kind of ingrained in me now. So I try to pass that along to the boys as well. There's a lot of work. A lot of people put a lot of the heart and soul into that work. To see it on a little screen like that is kind of almost insulting, in my opinion.
So now a follow-up to that, going into more detail, do you think that going to the theater and actually seeing a movie is going to stay relevant or is still relevant?
I think it depends really on the moviegoer. Some people prefer to stay home, they prefer to be shut-ins, but then going back to seeing something like Avengers Infinity War, you want to go there. Plus, if there's booze, that helps. But, moviegoing is such a shared experience that, we're all stuck on our smartphones, we're all stuck just hitting a button on our remote control and hitting something on demand. But there's something about actually going out of your way to see something. I'm a big fan of seeing midnight films at places like the Brattle and the Coolidge. I like that experience of seeing a horrible movie like The Room and knowing that I'm participating in this huge universal experience with the audience. There's nothing like that. You can't do that in your living room.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I feel like it's going to be harder and harder for Hollywood to get us out to the movie theaters. Sony just put out some sort of crazy TV that they call The Wall. It's an enormous flat screen TV. The quality of your TV is so much better. More and more people have practically home theaters, where like even with a movie like Bumblebee, you're not going to be missing as much if you have a screen the size of your living room wall. So I think they're going to have to really push the envelope and add more to the movie-going experience with like the Lux seats and the liquor. I know there's a theater in Wareham where you can get beer and take it to your seat. And, so it's just got to, there has to be more to it than just the movie. So they got to figure out what that is.
Yeah.
I just get impatient. I'm not going to wait like 3 months for that to be on demand or whatever. Like, I'm going to go see the movie. And I think that's a good point about it is an experience, You want to be able to experience that correctly and, be able to go back and be like, yeah, well, I saw Ghostbusters in the theater. You know what I mean?
3 times same day.
Yeah. 3 times
But
the same day, walking uphill. Yeah, no.
I don't even know if that's going to be our generation, that's a thing, but like, I don't know if my kids are going to care.
Well, right, and it's funny you say that because for me, I've tried to impart that to the boys. There's, I think, as a writer, as a producer, you've got storytelling is a linear thing. There's the development of the story. There's multiple acts. It's supposed to happen in a certain fashion. Watching it on an electronic device, the kids can pause it. People can walk out of the room, pick it up the next day.
Mm-hmm.
In the theater, you're there. It's an event.
Yeah.
It's a parade. You're going to sit there, and if you don't pay attention, you're going to miss it. And I think that lends credence to why it's the craft itself is a linear format. So you're forced to partake in the story and watch the story unfold, as opposed to at your convenience when you're ready to absorb it.
But even to play like devil's advocate in my living room, I'm not going to have the middle school students who are out on a date being obnoxious, and the guy in front of me isn't going to be blocking my view.
I can't argue with that. I can't argue with that.
Each one has a lot of pros and cons.
Yeah.
Well, not to deviate from that point, I still think we're in a day and age where streaming is still a relatively new concept. I mean, the internet hasn't been around for 100 years. People are still streaming, and consumer tastes change. There's still people who are going to go to the movie theater, and there's still going to be people who see something on streaming. And it depends on genre. If you look at Netflix, they're starting to amp up their productions. They're giving bigger budget productions on the Netflix streaming platform. And right now, it's still sort of a touch and go situation to see who's going to have the big budget productions on Netflix versus who's going to have it in theaters. I don't see Bumblebee going on streaming immediately before it hits the theaters.
I think it brings up a good point about the generational. A lot of younger folk are going to be more apt to stay at home, stream a movie online, but like for the older generation, a lot of that is nostalgia. They used to always go to the movie theaters when it was just becoming a popular thing. And they had back then the drive-in movie theaters. I feel like a lot of it.
It's about it like it was.
I was going to say, I don't like that he
Well, I mean,
older
they
generation.
still have them, and I know I'm back in my day. But for me personally, going to the movie theater, it all adds up to it's an experience. If I plan a night to go out, get dinner, go to the movie theater, I find myself more apt to remember what happened in that movie, remember that experience, as opposed to I can turn on, a movie on HBO any night that I want and just, easily forget it the next day because I ended up watching 5 movies that same day. So I mean, I think it's all lends really to that experience.
If you saw a film like Gravity on your smartphone, that would be horrible.
That's just.
Yeah, and a little bit more on the shared experience, because I can't argue with the convenience of it all. But the shared experience, again, for me going back, there was, where I came from, it was, you could sit in this space with complete strangers. Nobody cared where you were from. They didn't care what you wore, what you looked like, nothing. You're all there for the same reason, watching the story together. And you're all getting a different impression from it. That's something you're not going to experience in a controlled environment, in your home, in your car, in your, on your phone. And that's still the allure for me, is that kind of being in a space and laughing out loud and going, whoa, with a bunch of strangers and hearing people cheer and stuff. There's an energy level there that you're just not going to get at home.
And if you know anyone there, you never have to see them again.
Exactly, make a complete idiot. So if you ball out, you ball crying.
Yeah, exactly. They're not going to remember.
Would have helped enough.
You cried at Bumblebee?
I did, actually.
That was a better movie.
They played a song from the original cartoon movie, which really got it.
At home, you're not going to get the one who starts the clapping at the end. You're like, just sit down. Just sit
Yeah.
All right, so with that, we'll move on to our next question. This is kind of a question that you hear a lot of people ask these days, not particularly about film, but we're going to throw it to the classic Desert Island. Desert Island. You have no Wi-Fi to stream any movies, but you have a battery-powered DVD player, something to obviously watch it on. So what's the one movie if you were stuck there for the rest of your days till the battery runs out? Let's just say for this sake, it lasts long enough to watch it a couple of times. What's the one movie that you're bringing?
Can I just say, I think that's a sadistic question to ask someone like me as a film geek.
You were the one who's going to have a problem with that.
If I had to go right now, and this could change any day of the week, I'd probably go with Rear Window, Alfred Hitchcock's movie with Jimmy Stewart, just because I love that film. And every time I watch it, I learn something new every time I watch it. It's just the Hitchcock thing. It's a visual, some little snippet that he puts in there for the viewer to catch.
I get torn because I enjoy movies for the escapism, for the fun, for the spectacle of it. But then also, I'll stop in the middle of my day to catch a movie halfway through that I've seen a million times that has a lot of heart to it. something like Last Samurai or Blade Runner, something like that. But at the core, I want to be entertained. I want to be fascinated. It's got to be Empire Strikes Back. That would be the one, because it brings me back to a point where I was trying to figure out what they did in that movie, and I was so captivated by the magic they used in that film. The score, the effects, the characters. It's rudimentary character development, storytelling. That's basically been going on for centuries. And I think that's probably the biggest appeal for me, is that it speaks to a very simple part of my psyche. It doesn't get too complicated.
I'm not sure if this is the exact title, but I'd go with Raft Building 101. No.
Yeah.
To get off a desert island.
There you go.
It's useful.
Yeah, but generally speaking, that's such a hard question. And I always, I would want something that has, one of those movies that every time you watch it, there's something new, that you pick up something new. Like part of me wants to say Arrested Development. I know it's not a movie, but that kind of thing where every time you watch it, you pick up a new joke that you never heard before. Man, that's tough. The only one that jumps to mind, and it's not even like my favorite, but like a movie that you can kind of experience over and over again, is like Weird Al's UHF. Because every time you watch it, you like pick up on a little new joke that you didn't hear last time. So
I just showed my son that about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
On a deserted island. Yeah, I mean, maybe Castaway. I'd be like, that guy gets me. But, no, I think I would choose Back to the Future, because that's
Nice.
like
Good.
one of my favorite movies of all
That's a
time.
perfect one. That has a
Yeah.
lot of like.
Every
things
time you watch it,
you
yeah,
get
you go
something
back
new.
and you're like, oh my God, I didn't even notice that, and I've seen it who knows how many times. A dangerous
That's a good
amount.
one.
It's perfect.
That's a really
Yeah.
Okay, so this question isn't. We haven't thought about this question beforehand, but this is just one of my questions. I know that a lot of times, you have a good movie and you want to keep building off of that to build into a franchise eventually. But a lot of the times with a movie that's so critically acclaimed, it's hard to do that. What's a franchise that you think has done well in building those sequels and has done a good job in carrying that on?
The Dark Knight trilogy. Those are perfect. You have a director like Christopher Nolan who's been able to guide that character. And let's not forget, back in 1997, we had Batman and Robin, which was
Never
awful.
happened.
I tell myself that. But 8 years later, Christopher Nolan comes in and he essentially legitimizes Batman as a really great cinematic character. And he tops it off with The Dark Knight, which is like The Godfather Part 2 of superhero films.
Right.
Added by the fact that we have Heath Ledger, and then he bookends it appropriately with The Dark Knight Rises. It's excellent, and it feels a lot like not so much a superhero film, but just a really strong, organic, epic crime film.
Do you believe they cut that series off at the right time?
I do. I
Within
believe
the-
they did. Yep.
Yeah, they could have milked it for the introduction of Superman, and then I don't think it's been, and it's on a different level, because the first answer that I know a lot of people come up with is Marvel. They've had a lot of care throughout. There's a lot of Marvel stuff that happened before Tony Stark entered the picture. Before Robert Downey Jr. entered the picture, that people just kind of want to forget about. But Dark Knight was a mature movie. It was an intelligent movie. There were real human struggles going on in those movies, and Nolan did a great job of kind of grounding it in our reality. So it's almost plausible. Almost everything in those films is plausible in terms of character. But yeah, my second, being a hardcore Star Wars fan my whole life, they've botched a lot of it. So it would have to be what Marvel's been able to pull off. They're taking great care, and ironically, they probably learned from what happened with Star Wars. To be able to say, yeah, no Jar Jar's coming along here. We're going to make sure things are protected and represented well. So yeah, that's all I got.
I think the perfect franchise is, and again, it's not even my favorite, but it's just the way that they've executed it. Bond. They set it up early from the beginning, where it doesn't have to be the same actor.
Yep.
They don't even necessarily take place in. There's no continuity. So you don't have to worry about these people going back and being like, oh, well, you know, in the 5th movie they said this and it didn't pan out exactly the way. It's an independent story that has the same players and it exists in the same world, but they don't interact. They don't cross over like they do with Marvel. Like Marvel's done a phenomenal job, but Star Wars, not so much. And it's just a matter of time before Marvel has too many movies to keep track of. So then it's going to start to break down.
And they paint themselves into a corner and start eating themselves alive, basically.
And that's the great thing about James Bond is like you can watch every single one or just one, and it doesn't matter.
I feel like with Marvel too, there's a lot of there's so much going on in the Marvel universe, and then you bring these movies together like Infinity War, and a lot of people who are just coming in are just like, what the heck's going on? You know,
you have to have a
it
certain
becomes
amount of
too
buy-in
much.
even.
It becomes too much for people to handle. So like there's
Yeah, there's no excuse for Aquaman too. Like that shouldn't be a thing. Just my opinion, but
so what would be the franchise you think is done?
oh, I have no idea. I don't follow a lot of that. Last one I did was probably Gremlins, so they did great with their marketing. Yeah.
So going back to Star Wars really quick, touching upon that, what's your belief in how, you know, they can have all these movies going on in the 80s and 90s and then all of a sudden decide 20 years later to bring it back?
Well, it's interesting because, you know, say all you want about Lucas as a director, he set up a precedent in so many different directions that allowed Hollywood to think differently. Because he went against the Hollywood grain the whole time. He was like the ultimate independent filmmaker. You know, he reached a point where he was paying for his own movies, didn't have to. But then that turned on him because by the time he came around to do the second trilogy, he had so many people worshiping him and saying, yes, 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 that's a great idea, great idea, great idea, that whether it was his own capacity to kind of maintain some quality and integrity across the board, it just didn't translate. So he had strong story, poor execution. So now you've got all these other young filmmakers coming up and watching that happen. So even the Back to the Future trilogy was kind of sad towards the end. It got really goofy, you know. They're fun movies, but they're campy as hell, you know. And that's part of their charm. But I'm not sure if the funny stuff they were doing or campy stuff was deliberate, or if it just kind of we just kind of attached to it that way. But the Christopher Nolans, the Marvel guys, you know, they've been able to see those mistakes made, especially on a scale that big, and say, yeah, now we've got a guidebook of what not to do, and I think they benefited from the failure of those other guys.
So, and along with that, like spin-offs, how do you feel about that? Do you think they help add to a trilogy, or can some of them, like depending on how they're made, take away from what a franchise has done?
I feel like it depends on the trailer. It depends on the spinoff. I mean, I think Rogue One is probably one of my favorite Star Wars movies.
Agreed.
And it's also one of my favorite World War II movies.
All right.
And I just saw Solo recently, and it's okay. But that's kind of that painting into a corner. The more you put out, the more likely you are going to have a dog. Mm-hmm. You know, if they stopped The Matrix at the first one, it'd be a phenomenal movie.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. They continued it on.
I forgot about that.
It fell apart.
You're right.
Ocean's 11, love it. Mm-hmm. Saw Ocean's 12. I dislike Ocean's 11 more because of Ocean's 12. It was so bad. It's almost, not everything's a franchise, and they just have to know when to pull the plug. And it doesn't seem like they figured
Honestly,
that out.
Coming back, I'm a little bit worried and skeptical about how Avatar is going to turn out, because that had set such a precedent for film in and of itself. And you know, they've taken so long to make these sequels, but the fact that they're basically producing them all now, and then they're going to release them one after another, I'm a little bit skeptical about how they're going to be received.
Are they making multiples in that now?
Yeah. There's 4 that are being produced, and they're being I think the
trying to
first
remember
one.
even how
Rapid fire?
Yeah, so the first one was released in 2009 and was one of the highest grossing films of all time.
And it's set. It was a groundbreaking film,
Yeah.
both technologically and
So now the next one is being released at the end of 2020, and then I believe they're either going 3 in the next 4 years or 3 in the next 3 years. So there's actually 5 that are being
I'm
developed.
gonna have to go back and watch because I can't remember how that movie ended. Like, was it well? Like, I can't remember if it was
I don't
kinda
even
left
know if
open.
There's no need for, in my opinion,
Yeah.
there's no need for a sequel.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
no extra story to be told. But
Well, the danger too creatively.
but
is
I'll
that-
go see it.
The danger creatively is that 10 years ago Avatar came out. The landscape has changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Marvel's now running the gamut, and the Star Wars revivals are running the gamut, and Disney is essentially running the gamut. And where's room for Avatar? That's the.
I feel like it's a lot of that peer pressure that the public puts on directors. You know, you did so well in the first one, we want a second one. And I feel like a lot of whether directors or producers these days are hesitant to say, no, we're not going to give you a second one.
You just touched on something that I think hasn't been talked about a lot. Is the quality and intent of the film determines whether, I think, determines whether the audience needs to see another one.
Yeah.
I don't need to see another Logan.
Yeah.
Because it's such a masterpiece. It's such a beautifully done film.
And it's done.
It's
It's
so
over.
intense. Right,
Yeah.
but I don't need to know that he came back alive or his DNA came. I mean, it was so beautifully done. I don't need to see another one. I don't need to see an extension of the Nolan version of Batman, because they were so beautifully executed. They're rich films, They're really rich movies. When you got these tentpole movies, which are fun to watch and they're exciting, yeah, maybe there's some substance missing there that gets kind of sprinkled out along the way that you don't feel like you're totally satisfied. I'm not sure what the psychology is there, but I know that the movie theaters are forcing these filmmakers to kind of stretch things out because they know they're going to make the money
And I
back.
feel like it kind of dovetails into your question about people going to the movie theater.
Yeah.
Like, why
It
am
shapes the,
Yeah, why am I going to go spend $15 on a movie ticket to see the remake of a remake of a remake?
Absolutely.
Something that you know is going to be hot garbage anyways, but you're still there.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you sit there and you watch it and you're like, I saw everything good in the trailer.
Right.
But then they have these old films that are now being remade into that, and that's always like, you talk about the game changing since those films originally came
Right.
out. You have all these Disney movies that are being, remade into live
There's
action.
like 3 of them come out this year or something like that.
Well, yeah, it's like, and especially like I think that one that did it really well was Beauty and the Beast, because the way that they remade their movie, I think they did really well
I
on
didn't
that.
see it.
But like any of those it's always a chance that you take it and you're either gonna get a great reception from the public, or they're gonna look at you and say, what were you thinking?
And why
bring
was
them
this even necessary?
Yeah.
I
The
think
Lion
if-
King, I'm still wrapping my head around. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's gonna be
that
never-
one's baffling.
Why
it's
they would
like-
ever tarnish?
Because they know they're going to make money.
Well,
It
yeah.
was a
Yeah.
ripoff to begin with. It was,
That's why
it's
every
even a white
sequel's
lie,
like,
but
well, we're going to
get
do the
into
same thing. Same thing. Now it's them at Christmas.
But it's
Like,
but it's not even like live action.
it. I know.
That's
They're saying it's a live
yeah.
action. It's all still CGI.
yeah.
But I would like to see when they do a remake or a relaunch or whatever you want to call it, to take a movie that didn't quite land, or something that maybe has become a cult classic. Like, where's the Buckaroo Banzai sequel, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, it failed in the box office, but it's got a huge fan base now, and go with that, or bring out a movie.
Saw that in the theater.
There's a movie called Sahara with Matthew McConaughey.
Right.
It's a fun movie,
Absolutely.
but it didn't quite land. Try it again. Remake it. Maybe Matthew McConaughey wasn't quite the right person. Maybe
No,
his,
but the other dude,
I
what's
can't
his
remember.
name?
Oh,
He makes that movie.
He's
though.
hysterical.
He's fantastic.
So
You
it's
know?
like one of those learn from your mistakes.
Right. Yeah.
You know what you did wrong the first time.
Yeah.
So
Fix it,
So
come back.
relaunch that and bring that back. It was a great premise, and it could have been a great franchise.
It was one of those storylines that tried to play on the whole Indiana Jones action guy thing that actually landed.
Yeah.
It really landed. I was
I
frustrated.
feel like it
didn't
might have been a
catch it.
marketing thing because it's
Yeah.
a fun movie.
I was
It's
frustrated I didn't see it in the
Good,
theater. 'cause
good
it's
cast,
it's
fun
a
movie.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to move on to the next question, and we're going to talk about actors and directors. So, is there any combination? What is the either director by himself, actor by himself, or director-actor combination that is going to get you into that theater, no matter what?
Typically, two directors I'm a big fan of are Scorsese and Spielberg. And typically their work is always going to deliver in some respects or another. Spielberg, this big, grandiose epic, whether it's a period piece or just a big, fun summer blockbuster like Jurassic Park, I know I'm going to be entertained. And when he works with Tom Hanks, I enjoy those combinations because they deliver solid dramas. And just generally, I'm biased because I love Scorsese, so anything Scorsese makes, I'm generally going to like.
I'm more apt to go simply based on a director than an actor. I think there's great actors, but I feel like without a good director behind it, it's gonna bomb. Terry Gilliam, I wish Hollywood would give him more movies. I understand why they don't. Coen Brothers, they make great movies. The Wachowski siblings, mostly pretty good.
At least they're trying to do something different.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Is like,
sincere,
yeah,
you know?
if it fails, you're like, all right, I get it, but keep coming out. Zack Snyder is one I don't get. Like, I don't understand how he got put in charge of DC when he did. He's had some good movies, but he's had some bombs. Yeah, I think directors are more likely to get me to go to see a movie.
I mean, I will go see anything that Melissa McCarthy is in, personally. But, she's a big star right now. But anything like that, directors, I'd go with Tim Burton. Even though I know Batman and Robin was a no.
That
Joel
wasn't him.
Schumacher.
That was Joel
Oh,
Schumacher.
was it? Okay,
Yeah.
my bad.
You're safe.
Yeah, because I was like, that one was kind of trippy. It was kind of Pee-wee's Big Adventure-y.
Yeah.
I love Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah. That's another one that has a joke
Batman and
after
Robin
joke.
wasn't
Yeah.
intended to be.
Yeah.
So let's say you have this actor or director that you always watch, and they make all these great movies, but then they make that one movie that just doesn't hit with you. Is it more okay?
Well, it's for me. Ridley Scott is that guy, right? He's a brilliant visionary. He's proven himself as a director, but every now and then, something that just doesn't land. Alien Covenant is a perfect example of that. Right? Source material, it's so fertile. Pardon the expression, because it's all about aliens. And but how do you screw that up?
Yeah.
Especially when you're the one at the helm. You were the first one to introduce it. Now you're carrying it. And that was his whole thing. I'm going to bring this back and kind of hit the reset button on this whole thing. Just didn't deliver. It looked beautiful. It sounded beautiful. The acting was great. The story was interesting. But there was just some element missing there that didn't make you want to see it over and over and over again. But I love his work. So I know that there's a sophistication level, there's a dedication, there's a commitment, there's a quality level that Scott is always going to put into what he does, but sometimes it just doesn't land. So I don't think it's a perfect formula. I don't think you can bet on any director or any art form or of any kind to deliver exactly the way you expect it to every time. Unfortunately, Hollywood thinks that is the case. So they'll bank on the guy, who, the last 3 pictures gross, blah, 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 and let's get him or her, And it just isn't the case.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford is my favorite action hero until he started to branch off into all these other movies. And I was
Yeah.
Isn't he like 80?
Yeah. Stick to Han Solo and Indy and
Stop flying planes.
yeah, it's time to stop now.
And that's a good point. I think that actors are definitely going to be given more of a leeway with that.
Yeah.
Because when a director, it's their idea, it's their vision.
Yeah, they're at
but with
the
an
helm,
actor, there's a lot of things that depend on it. What role were they cast into? What does the script of the movie look like? What is their
Who was the director?
Who's the director?
The
What is
director.
who are there and who they're cast with? I feel like has a lot of the effect on that too. You can have a great actor, but as soon as they're cast alongside this C-list celebrities, then that can lower their value a lot.
True.
Gary Marshall said that if there's like a great lead actor, that's probably just the actor. If everyone's acting good in it, it's the director.
Mm-hmm.
So there's movies out there that you can. Frank Delabon is a great director.
Yep.
Everybody, is in his movies are great.
Mm-hmm. Well, look at his daughter. Look at League of Their Own. Right?
Yeah.
They're not all A-listers, but that it's a perfect film, for that kind of movie. It's not lasers and explosions, but I enjoy the other movies too. But that's a great point. Is that I guess that's kind of a telltale sign, that the director can pull those performances out of people. Sometimes the actor can too.
Right.
If it's a small ensemble, they can do that as well. But yeah, it's absolutely true.
So now we've talked about these, the art of building a trilogy, and then the actors themselves, and we look at these actors that are known for one role in particular. No matter what else what other movies they're cast into, you look at that and just be like, with Daniel Radcliffe, he's Harry Potter. You see him in anything else.
I feel like he's doing a really good job of escaping that.
He's done a better job. So, like, what are some of the actors that you look at and you can only see them as one?
Arnold Schwarzenegger is the Terminator. I have great difficulty. I love Arnold's films, but more often than not, if I see him wear a pair of sunglasses and a black leather jacket, it's the Terminator. He's done some great work, but I will always associate him with the Terminator. And speaking of which, there is a Terminator film coming out this year, and he's back with James Cameron and everyone else.
So that's just kind of going to re-cement him as the Terminator.
I see him as kindergarten cop.
But see, that's a good example of how you can take an actor that's known for something, beating the crap out of robots, but then you cast him as, a cop alongside a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
It was a perfect formula. I mean, it's one of my favorite films. I mean, it's just funny. It's funny because it's him, first of all, him in that environment, But yeah,
But going back to the director too, you also had Ivan Reitman directing it.
Right.
Who's a great comic director.
Yeah, I think the we're talking about opinion here. We're talking about impression. I think, with all due respect to the advancement of technology and how connecting the people has made so much easier, social media is toxic to art.
Oh, yeah.
It's so opinion driven. That art, I've watched art die because of social media, and the creators, the publishers, the distributors of this art are banking too much on social media and popular opinion to back all these creative works, and it's kind of a backwards way of doing it.
I think it's crazy now when they're casting people, they'll research to see how many followers they have on Instagram and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Good example of going back to what you said, the Ghostbusters reboot in 2016 was one of the most disliked trailers in YouTube history, or just in history in general. That was amazing. The movie was essentially declared a flop before it even got released.
Yeah.
But part of that too, and going back to our discussions about cashing in and remaking, Ghostbusters was a great franchise, and then they rebooted it. And of course, you have a very unhappy, set of fans who essentially dismantled the reboot.
Yeah.
But it's something.
It's a great case study. If anything.
Yeah, and some of it is
Solo was the same way.
Yeah,
Sorry,
different actor.
But I feel like some of that's just Hollywood being tone deaf,
course.
because the Ghostbusters reboot, I saw the trailer for it, and I'm like, it's slapstick. Ghostbusters isn't slapstick. It missed the tone of the movies. It missed what people like. They've released a teaser trailer for some other.
Ironically, they're going to have
That looks
Ghostbusters.
amazing, and it's like 3 seconds, and I'm psyched to see it. But it's because it has the right tone. It's a little creepy.
And it's said to be set in that universe of the first 2 Ghostbusters films. With
But
the
honestly,
son of the
that
director.
didn't even weigh into it. To me, I watched the trailer, and it felt like the originals, and I'm like, I'm in.
I feel like they're doing this thing now where they're like, let's remake this movie, but we're going to cast all women because this will erase all of our wrongdoings ever. We're going to cast all women in this, which happened with Oceans. It happened with Ghostbusters. Then The Hangover, they're like, well, we'll just call it Rough Night.
Right? Well,
Very bad things.
And I'm glad you're the one making that point. I don't know if any of us could make that point.
Right, no, you're not allowed to.
But it's, I've made that observation myself, is that it's like, I can almost mark it like since when Frozen came out. Hollywood started this agenda where, okay, we're going to now deliberately, consciously, and for sake of public opinion, start casting women into roles that we hadn't been before.
Which is good.
Which isn't a bad thing.
But make their own movie.
But the intent, exactly. That's and it comes down to and I don't care whatever group it is you're trying to get, filter into whether it's minorities, whatever the case is, there reaches a point where the sincerity of it disappears. And you're just doing it because there's a social obligation, to that, and the work suffers because of that.
Well, and part of that is, and I speaking out of school, I'm guessing, but you take an all-woman cast and put it into something like Ghostbusters, well, why can't the women have their own story?
Yeah.
And I think,
Absolutely.
And I think that's why Black
That's-
Panther did so well, because it's a story that takes place in Africa. It's not like let's take Saving Private Ryan and make it an all-black
Make it
cast.
exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
It
Exactly.
made sense, and it was their own story with their own voice.
It's like these days, make a movie with who you want to be in that movie in mind already. Don't make this movie that's blown around an all male cast.
Yeah, now we got to
but
have
then
an Asian
say,
guy and a black guy.
yeah,
and a Latin
due
guy,
to
and,
what we
that's-
want, what society thinks needs to be socially acceptable now, cast it that way. I think a lot of directors these days, or people producing these movies, look at social acceptability over their actual art, their vision for the film.
Well, I don't think the directors do. I think the studios.
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
They got to get their money back. It's a sad thing, but it's like that with music. But it's like that with any art that's being peddled.
Yeah.
It just is. I don't know if it's premature to get into the Black Panther thing, but there's a lot of stuff they did right in that film.
And we'll absolutely talk about that.
But I think, and this kind of spinning it back to the streaming, I think streaming is going to be, I don't know, not necessarily Hollywood, but that classic Hollywood, the end of classic Hollywood. It's not the studios that are like, we're going to note this to death because we invested the money, so we're going to tell you how to do this so we can see box office returns, yada, yada, yada. We don't care what you do. This is your budget. We want subscribers.
Yeah.
So if it brings subscribers in, and you can see it, just some of the projects that are hitting now are so bizarre and so weird that would have never gotten made before.
Well, going on that, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, great film.
That
It's
was
on
so
Netflix.
great.
It was.
Yeah.
But the Coen brothers said that we wouldn't be able to get this made at a studio.
Yeah.
Because Hollywood is investing in franchises and superhero films.
Yeah.
This year is going to be The Irishman with Scorsese, De Niro, Pacino, Pesci, Keitel. That's a great film. But the studios didn't want to take a chance on it because it was massively expensive. Netflix came in and they're going to make it. And it's going to get released at the end of the year. And it's going to be an interesting film. And, 30, 40 years ago, it would have gotten made by a studio. But now the studios are shifting more toward, more popular blockbuster content than art.
Right. And that's going to be their problem is they're going to remake, I don't know, something ridiculous that was, they're going to remake Cannonball Run, which I would actually really go see. But, and then be like, why isn't anyone going to see this? And it's because everyone's home watching a Scorsese film that they can only see on Netflix.
And there's also a part of this I'm not sure a lot of people think about is that from a distribution standpoint, the overhead is so low for the studios to get behind.
Yeah, you
They
just
don't
put
have to
it
worry
up.
about the theaters.
Yeah.
They don't have to worry about any of that. Here's the files that everyone needs to have to play on their servers, and that's it.
And the marketing, I'm just going to send you out an email because I already have your email.
Absolutely.
Boom, done. Yeah.
Absolutely. So there's that whole part that's saving them so much money.
Roger Ebert back in the 80s said that with technology and what it's going to be with on-demand, he said that streaming services like Netflix, he didn't say Netflix specifically, but these streaming services are going to open up a bigger audience for art house films. Look at Roma. A few years ago, you would have had to go into the city to go see that, but now all you have to do is just watch it on your TV, and it's already Oscar nominated.
Yeah. And like a lot of these Netflix originals aren't Netflix movies. They just go out to
Buy
film
them up.
festivals and buy them up.
Right.
Yeah.
Last thought before we move on to the next question is, you touched upon, social media is killing this art form, and I feel like that's what a lot of it is based around these days. Is that instead of movie critics, they still have a lot of influence on it, but you look at it, and the majority is just these average everyday people sitting at home on social media. A critic can have a bad review of it, and the studio can just be like, okay, that's one review in all these critics. But as soon as social media gets behind, you release a trailer and social media rips it apart. These people sitting behind their computer screens, that completely kills the vibe of a movie.
Everyone's an expert on everything.
Before it's even in
Yeah.
production, exactly.
Well, film criticism isn't what it used to be. Film
Yeah.
theory isn't what it used to be. Now you have Rotten Tomatoes. You have the rating system on IMDb. You have message boards and social media. It's amazing.
It's just become the everyday person that has this much power to tear down. You know, it's just one person sitting at home, but you multiply that into millions of people, and it's.
And I understand, you know, the value of that. Okay, we're getting it from the horse's mouth. These are the consumers. These are the kinds of things they want to buy. These are the kinds of things. But then you got to factor in, well, the kind of person who's putting that amount of energy, you know, into expressing themselves online. You know, it's a pretty rangy group.
And
you know,
it's the amount. You know, they released a new Avengers trailer for the Super Bowl, which is only really like 15 extra seconds of the other
12 hours, you've got 30 video bloggers.
If I go onto
analyzing the
YouTube,
trailer.
if I go onto YouTube, it's like here's 50 videos of a breakdown of the trailer, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna watch 4. But after a while, you're like, it's ridiculous. Like how there's not enough there to talk about.
Right.
When I'm a studio or a director, I'm looking at it and I'm going to say, no matter what, someone's going to find something wrong with this. Yeah. You know, it's just inevitable.
That stuff drives me crazy.
Yeah.
When you know you sit and you watch and enjoy a movie, and then some guy who's seen it literally 50 times is like, well, you know, this, you know, he put the hammer down over here, so it couldn't pop. And I'm like, who cares, man? Like, it was a great movie.
Who cares? Get out of your mom's basement.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So we're going to move on from that. Very good discussion about that, but we're going to move on to, instead of films that have been made, we're going to talk about your film. If you had the choice to make a film, your own fantasy film, the story, the cast, the director, what's it going to be? We're going to keep this under an hour discussion.
Wow.
Are you like stealing our ideas?
He's mining.
Yes,
You're like, oh, my studio. And what ideas do you have?
Yes, I'll be the last person to discuss this and give my own input.
I can't go first.
I'll be that person on social media that tears it down after you.
I'll go first.
That'll never work.
I'll go
He's
first.
brave.
I'll go first. I don't know if this is exactly what you're asking, but there's a great franchise that is untouched. It was briefly done in a TV show that failed because it wasn't done right, but the Dresden Files. It's a hardcore, gritty Chicago detective who's a wizard. And he advertises in the Yellow Pages, wizard. He's that kind of great anti-hero where he's having what should be his heroic moment, and he's wearing like a janitor suit that's like 4 sizes too small. It's funny. It's unlike anything else I've ever, you know, it's got a little Harry Potter. It's got a little crime. It doesn't, you know, tiptoe around things. I think the second novel is about werewolves, and there's no like, oh my God, what's attacking everyone? Like page 3, they're like, werewolves. Like it's really great. Huge cast of characters. I think there's like over a dozen books already out, and it's perfect. The fact that it isn't made into a movie, I don't understand why. Yeah. Who I would cast, that gets a little, you know, more difficult. Nate Fillion, that like his kind of sort of heroic but comedic style, I think would be phenomenal for it. But I'm also a big fan of going with unknowns. Like Hugh Jackman, he was nobody when they cast him as Wolverine. He's perfect because he was nobody. Yeah. And then director, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'd have to go with, you know, kind of anybody but Michael Bay.
Yeah, you see so many movies these days that are being adapted from books.
Yeah.
And you know, some of them hit it right on the nose, but then others they take it into this movie format and they're just like, well, instead of this, we're going to do this, and instead of that, it's going to do that.
And that's the thing is you know, they brought it to, I think it was like a sci-fi original, so you know their budget was like $8, and he's supposed to have like a wisecracking sidekick spirit that lives in a skull, but they made it a ghost instead, which just wasn't quite the same. Yeah, you know, with a huge budget, I baffled. Someone has to have the rights to it. That has to be tied up somewhere.
If there's one thing I'd like to see is I'd like to see a good Fantastic Four film. And with Disney buying Fox, pretty soon we're going to get that one day. And if I had to go with, I'd probably go with a cast of either unknowns or actors who haven't quite hit that superstar status to lock them in for sequels. But I honestly think that's one franchise that desperately needs the reset button, and Marvel will eventually do it.
I think and this goes back to my childhood. There was a TV series called I think it was the first anime series featured in the United States. It was called Star Blazers.
Oh my God, yes.
And
That'd be amazing.
Japan made an attempt at one a couple of years ago of a live action
Yes.
one, and it was actually pretty decent. They just didn't have the budget to really pull it off to the scale that it could be.
Battleship Yamato, right?
Yeah, it was actually pretty decent, but it just didn't hit. And if I had the opportunity, if I had had the budget, I would break that out into a Netflix series, like a live action Netflix series, because there was something about that, and it's either that or Battlestar, the reimagining of Battlestar, which I thought was beautifully executed. It just came down to just people in extreme circumstances trying to survive and get through something at the core. That included spaceships and explosions and aliens.
Thematic-wise, it was very similar.
It's very
survival
similar.
of the human race.
Very
was
similar,
yeah.
exactly. That's why I kind of merged the two because there was a really compelling theme there, and so if I kind of switched over to what Battlestar was able to do, I'm sorry to say this because I work here at PACTV, but the creators of the new Battlestar series, which didn't get the credit that it deserved, put back on TV. They took a lot of risks, and they had a lot of social commentary that had been missing from sci-fi and television in general. They addressed a lot of really heavy stuff. It was shortly after the attacks on 9/11, and it was about a human disaster situation, catastrophe. To be able to bring more of that kind of work to light, and the opportunity for actors. So the first director would probably be Alfonso Cuarón. Or if I went total Star Blazers and just kid fun, it would be Guillermo del Toro, who I think is he's a visionary. I think he's our generation's Jim Henson, with a dark edge to him. But for lead roles, that's a tough man. That's a really tough one.
If I could go off you, if Guillermo del Toro had rebooted the Haunted Mansion film, I would have watched that instead of the Eddie Murphy film, which we'll pretend doesn't exist.
I feel like if Guillermo did the Haunted Mansion, it would never get out because Disney would be like, we're just going to scare people to death. Like, it would be legitimately horrifying.
Yeah.
Sarah, do you have any film that you would?
As like a fantasy draft of filmmakers and actors. I don't know. I want to see like Tarantino direct a movie without Samuel L. Jackson once. Just once. I mean, I love him in it, but like maybe like an Edward Norton sort of thing. See if he can do that and cast Muppets. See how it goes.
Throw them together.
Yeah.
Out of a hat.
Edward
Let's
Norton.
see how good you are. Yeah.
So with that, we're going to move on to the Oscars, which are coming up. And you all have a list in front of you of what's nominated in the top 7 categories, the higher profile categories. So really quickly, first, who's going to be watching the Oscars live?
I will be.
If I don't fall asleep.
If you don't fall asleep. I like that
I
answer.
never watched TV.
I just got reminded that the Oscars are about movies.
Yes,
I always
it's
get
not a
those
Muppet.
confused. Yeah. So really quickly, since we have a lot to get through with the Oscars, we're just going to go around to each of you and give your predictions for what you think is going to take the categories. So, who would like to begin?
If I had to go with predictions from a pragmatic point of view, I'd have to go with Green Book for Best Picture. I feel that it hits all the right notes, that I feel like the scales are tipping toward it. I feel like the potential upset could legitimately be Bohemian Rhapsody. I know that sounds absurd, but it already won a Golden Globe. Yeah. Anything's possible at this point.
I saw Bohemian Rhapsody last weekend, and they went really safe with that.
They did.
And that was disappointing to me because there was some dark stuff going on in his life. And at the time, the 70s and 80s were not pretty behind the scenes, you know. They could have taken a mature approach. They could have taken a real approach. They decided to kind of gloss it over and make it safe for general audiences. More people can kind of enjoy the music. I understand that priority too because the music is amazing. And he did a great job and all that. But once I heard that Sacha Baron Cohen, who was originally cast for the role, walked away from the project because they were going to go soft on it. You know, maybe I was a little biased going in, but they really went safe with it, in my opinion. So I don't know. I don't know if that's. I think for that reason, I don't think it's up to the caliber of like Green Book or even Black Panther or.
No, I say that because I think it might be an upset, like a dark horse. I don't.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't. I don't do it based on
understand.
merit.
I think my guess. I think Green Book has a great shot only because knowing behind what kind of material Farrelly has done in the past. This is such a departure for him. For this subject matter, they've usually used comedy to kind of deal with social issues historically. I think it's got a really good shot. As far as no, we're not getting into actors yet, are we? So I'm not
Well,
sure.
no, you can.
Oh.
Any of these you can call it. We're gonna. I would say highlight 2 or 3 categories that you think. For your
I think
predictions.
I think Vigo is far overdue for an Oscar. I've liked him since his cameo in Carlito's Way, and everything he's done. He's always been right on. He's always been right there. He's completely believable. He's always in the moment. He's an excellent actor. History of Violence, Eastern Promises. I mean, those are strong movies. I think he's overdue, and I think he's got a really good shot at it. I can't say about the actresses. I don't know enough about any of these films and their performances in them.
Well, Best Picture, I tend to feel these things are kind of political. I'm going to go with Black Panther. I think they're going to jump on the big wave of superhero movies and how it was kind of a groundbreaking film. And it's the only spot where they can give a nod to Black Panther because there's no one else nominated for it.
True.
Which is crazy. So I think it's the only spot that they can do something like that. So I think that's where that will happen. I think lead actor, I think Rami Malek will get it. I feel like they just like good impressions. And I think he's great. Like I was a big fan of his when he was on Mr. Robot and The Pacific. I think he's a great actor. Not saying he doesn't deserve it, but I just feel like that's kind of going to be how it goes. And then I'm going to jump way down to the animated feature. I just saw Incredibles 2, and I loved it. So I'd like to see that. But I hear Isle of Dogs is really good, but I haven't seen it yet.
It's good.
Yeah.
If I had to go though with animated feature, based on being pragmatic, I'd go with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, given its previous wins. I think Isle of Dogs was excellent.
Yeah.
But I feel like Spider-Verse hit the mainstream a lot more.
Oh, it was.
Thus, in terms of popularity, it's a great film.
It's
like
so
4 years to make.
From an artistic standpoint, there's so many disciplines involved in making that film, and it's beautifully executed. It's really, really well done.
I think the scales are tipping toward that.
Sarah?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like they're gonna go with A Star Is Born because they've already done that movie before.
4 times.
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
kind of got a little bit snubbed in the last couple of major awards,
Like how is that still a thing? But no, I'm rooting for Black Panther now. I don't know.
I think it would definitely pave the way for movies of that type. Superhero movies have never gotten
I
that.
feel like Heath Ledger did that. Like
Yeah.
he was the first one who really kind of did that,
Yeah, you're right.
and they only
The Dark
did it
Knight
because he
gets
passed
snubbed.
away.
Yeah.
Yep.
But the fact that it was even made the list kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
So going on, you're looking through this list. What are there any films or actresses or actors that you don't think should have been nominated that were nominated?
Well, I look at this list and I realize I need to see a lot more movies.
Yes.
Because
That was my first look.
a lot of these, Green Book, I don't even know what that is. I've never even heard of it. Which I feel like is kind of a normal thing for Oscars. I feel like every year there's at least one that doesn't get the same advertising as like big budget stuff and kind of disappears. But there's a lot of stuff on here that I definitely need to check out.
I think going into the one that may win, I think Glenn Close has a good shot with The Wife. Films rarely win based on their one nomination, but the Academy does love veteran actors, people who haven't gotten their due in a very long time, or haven't gotten recognition. I think of Forrest Whitaker. He won for The Last King of Scotland, and that was the film's only nomination. I think Glenn Close has a very good chance. If not, I think Olivia Colman could beat her for The Favorite, which has racked up quite a lot of nominations. And I think Marshall Ali, once again looking at the tipping scales, I think he'll win for Green Book in the repeat supporting actor category.
Yeah.
I mean, who does the voting?
The Academy, typically actors, directors, producers.
Yeah. How do you get voted into the Academy?
It's a number of things. It's political. People can be people who've been nominated. They get invited.
And then there's like, I found out like there's a lot of campaigning and advertising directly to the academies. So it's political. There's money behind it. So it's a weird process.
If you read Variety or The Hollywood Reporter in print, you'll see these ads for your consideration. There's a
Right.
lot of money spent on those.
Yeah.
Well, if any of you are interested, we want to remind everyone the Academy Awards will air live February 24th at 8 p.m. So with that, I want to thank everyone for coming. Andy, Sarah, Dave, Dan. And I want to thank everybody for watching. For the local scene, this was our first movie roundtable, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.